Carrie, Judge of your Floyd County Superior Court 1. I'm here today to speak to you about Constitution Day. This is a day celebrated in the state of Indiana. Across the state, we have judges from across the state going into all different schools to talk to students about Constitution Day, various topics. Today, I thought a topic of interest, especially for those of you approaching age 18, would be answering the call of jury duty. I was elected to the bench and began serving in January of 2021. And since that time, I can tell you the most common question I get from everyone is questions about jury duty. How can I get out of it? Can I do it? How do I sign up? All kinds of questions regarding jury duty. So I thought it might be really helpful to explain that to everyone who here in high school will be getting that call at some point in time in the future. So I'm going to cover several topics. We have a short amount of time, so I'm going to try to hit the highlights on a lot of different things. First, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and my court. We'll talk about the U.S. and the Indiana Constitution and where the right to a jury trial comes from. We've got a very short video that I think really sums up the process very nicely for you. And then if we have some time, I'll talk to you about the jury trial process from the juror perspective. So, as I mentioned, I am the judge of Floyd Superior Court Number 1. I have the major felony cases in my court, though I do have a court of general jurisdiction. I have civil and criminal cases. We have a total of 4 courts in Floyd County and 1 magistrate court. So the majority of the cases in my court are going to be level 6 felony cases all the way up to murder. I am a graduate of the same school system that you are in, actually Floyd Central High School, and I have 2 sons who have not too long ago graduated from Floyd Central also. I graduated from Indiana University Southeast with a degree in political science and then went on to practice law for 20 years before taking the bench. And so I want to dive right in and talk to you about the Constitution very briefly because this is Constitution Day. So in the Constitution, that is where we find your right to a jury trial. And in particular, the United States Constitution, under Article 3, Section 2, it says specifically, the trial of all crimes, except in cases of an impeachment, shall be by jury. And such trial shall be held in the state where said crime shall have been committed, and etc. So that is where we start. Now from there, we look to the Indiana State Constitution, which goes into even more detail, and that is where under Article number 1, we begin with Section 12, that the courts are open and justice shall be administered freely and without purchase, completely and without denial, speedily and without delay. Section 13 outlines that for all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall have the right to a public trial by an impartial jury in the county in which the offense shall have been committed, to be heard by himself and counsel. And it goes on as well. Then Section 19 and 20 outline that in all criminal and civil cases, the right of a jury trial shall be. And there are very few exceptions. I will say there are some civil cases where you do not have a right to a jury trial. But other than that, generally speaking, you do. And so that is where we get this right to a jury trial and the need for jurors and impartial jurors. And that's where our random jury selection process comes from. And this is one of perhaps the only mandatory civic duty that you may have in your lifetime, because the other one might be a draft to the military, and that really doesn't happen very often or ever, but jury trials do happen quite frequently, and so it is very likely that you will get summoned for jury duty. So I want to go through some of that with you so you understand what that looks like, what that process looks like, and how important it is that you do participate in that process. Without our citizens, and in particular the citizens of Floyd County, being willing to participate as jurors, we could not provide for these constitutional rights, and that is why it's so important. And I will tell you that having spoken to lots of jurors after jury trials, they absolutely enjoy the experience and are so glad and have a very positive feeling of being part of that process. The worst part of jury trials probably is the inconvenience, and that's why most people try to get out of it, because they have other things to do. They have jobs and kids and school. But we implore people to go ahead and take the time and pause their life and participate in this process if called upon to do so. And for you, and the reason why I think it's really important for you as high schoolers to know about this, this begins when you turn age 18. That's when you become eligible. So next up, I want to show a video. It is a very, very short video, but I think it very nicely sums up the process. So we're going to cue up the video, and then we'll go into it a little more detail specific to Floyd County as soon as the video is over.
Jury service is one of the most unique privileges of being an American citizen. In fact, it is so important to our democracy that it's mentioned 3 times in our Constitution. Jury trials form the backbone of our justice system, providing everyone the right to have charges against them decided by a jury selected from their community. How do you become a juror? A person must be a U.S. citizen and a resident of the geographic area served by the court to be eligible for jury service. If you've ever voted, driven a vehicle, held a state ID, paid taxes, or received public benefits, you may be called for jury service. Courts randomly pull names from these lists to ensure the jury pool reflects the demographic diversity of their communities. This random selection process also ensures that jurors cannot be handpicked by the judge or the lawyers to try to reach a particular outcome. Once your name is selected, in most jurisdictions, you'll receive a summons requiring you to appear in court on a specific day, where you'll be placed in a jury pool for a particular case. The judge and attorneys ask questions to determine if you can be fair to both sides and listen to all the evidence before making up your mind. With nearly 150,000 jury trials taking place in state courts each year, and 5,000 more in federal courts, there's a real need for jurors. Nearly 2/3 of Americans live in communities with a one-day or one-trial system, meaning jurors report for service and are either selected to serve on a jury for one trial, or they're released after one day. And of course, all courts prohibit discrimination in jury service based on gender, race, ethnicity or national origin, religion, and physical disability. So, if you're selected, what happens next? The fate of a defendant being found guilty or not guilty in a criminal case, or liable or not liable in a civil case, rests in the hands of the jury. While the judge determines what evidence can be allowed in the courtroom and outlines the legal rules that jurors must follow, the jurors determine the facts and who should win the case based on those facts. This is why it's crucial for every member of the jury to listen, really listen, to all the evidence being presented. It's an honor and a privilege to enjoy the benefits of American citizenship. Not much is asked of us in return. But serving on juries is an important part of our obligation to our fellow citizens and to our country. And by serving, you will personally have a hand in ensuring justice in our courts. Thank you for doing your part.
Okay, and so I want to just let everyone know, if you're watching this on YouTube, that you can put a question in the comment section if you have any, and we'll try to get those answered before our time is up. Now, specific to civil versus criminal, so a lot of people have questions about that. Most of our jury trials are going to well, they may be civil or criminal, but typically you're going to have 6 jurors in a civil trial. And then a criminal trial may have either 6 jurors, depending if it's a lower level crime, or 12 jurors if it's a higher level crime. And then we typically have a couple of alternates. So typically we're seating either 8 or 14 people for a jury trial. And in Floyd County, I would say you could an average of 2 to 4 jury trials per year per court is what we are typically seeing, though of course that could vary depending on how many people want to take their case to trial. But with those numbers, we send out about 100 summonses per week for each of 3 of the trial courts automatically every week. So we have about 300 people being summoned every week to come as a prospective juror. Now, when you get this in the mail, this is what you're going to get. It's a postcard. This is several of them, but you'll get a postcard. And just this year, we have a new program. Our clerk, Danita Burks, implemented a program where we have iJuror. So you go online, you fill out all of your information on that website, and there will be some questions. They're not terribly difficult. Address, name, age, how many kids do you have, what's your job, a little bit of personal information. That is going to be information that the court and the lawyers will have access to. That will be destroyed at the conclusion, but they will use that information because part of their job, the lawyer's job and the court's job, is to find out what 8 or 12 or 14 jurors are going to be suitable for this case that is going to be coming before the court. And so you're going to show up on that Monday morning after you've been summoned. Well, let me back up. Once you put your information in, you are going to potentially be summoned for a quarter, for 3 months. And then they will send you a second document in the mail, and it will look like a summons, and that is the document you're going to get. And that means, yes, you do need to go and participate in an actual potential trial. Now, I say potential because the trial may not happen, but it might. So this gives you all the instructions, but you'll call on the Friday before the Monday or look online and see if your trial is happening. And if your trial is happening, then you'll show up on that Monday morning at the time it says, usually 9 o'clock, and check in with the bailiff and the court, and about 100 people are going to show up with you, and they're going to be processed, and then we're going to have a process. Now, before we get into the details of that part of the process, I do want to tell you there are some ways that you will not have to serve as a juror, and I think this is really important for everyone to hear. Really 3 ways. We have disqualification, exemption, or deferral. Now, for disqualification, there is a list in the law of several reasons why you cannot serve as a jury. You would not be permitted to serve as a jury. And so you must be a citizen of the United States. You must be at least 18 years old. You must be a resident of the Summons County. You must be able to read, speak, and understand the English language. You must not be suffering from a physical or mental disability that prevents you from rendering satisfactory jury service. You must not be under a guardianship appointment because of mental incapacity. You must not be a person who has had your rights revoked by reason of a felony conviction and those rights have not been restored. And you must not be a law enforcement officer if it is for a criminal case. So if you get this summons and you fit into one of these categories, and it could happen because maybe you've moved, maybe you didn't turn 18 yet, maybe you're having a medical disability at the time, maybe you're under a guardianship and you have a severe health issue, then you will want to be in contact with the clerk immediately and take documentation to the clerk's office in person to get your name taken off of the roster. If you don't do that, and a lot of people don't, if you don't, you will still have to show up on that Monday that you are summoned and bring that documentation with you and present it to the bailiff when you are being checked in. At that time, you should be dismissed, or at some point during that morning, you will be taken off the list. Another way that you may be not required to serve is exemption, and that is if you have already served on a jury trial within the previous 24 months. And then the other, and probably the most common way that we see that people request, is a deferral. A deferral doesn't mean that you don't have to serve, it just puts off the time that you're going to serve to another time period. So for example, you might be in college and you are away at school, and so you're not home and you have classes and you just simply can't be there. And there again, you need to provide some documentation. You can even do that in advance of that Monday and fill out a form or send an email, call the clerk's office or the court, reach out in some way to let them know you have been summoned and you are a student, or it might be that you're medically ill or getting ready to have a baby. There could be a lot of different reasons that temporarily you're not able to do this. And so what the court will do is they will take your information under oath that you are presenting to the court, the reason why you cannot do it, and make a decision of whether you should be granted a deferral. I can tell you that if you're a student in college, typically what we do is we say, well, give us a couple of weeks in the summer that you will be home and that you can do this. And we will notify the clerk of that, and that is when they will set your time for. And I will tell you that that happens a lot, and if you get the opportunity to serve on a jury while you're in college, you should absolutely take it. I think you would very much enjoy it and be a great part of your learning. Now, many times trials do not happen. So frequently you're going to call on that Friday and you will not have a jury trial. It'll be canceled. Or you may show up on that Monday morning and then they'll cancel it that morning. They settled at the last minute, some last minute issue. That is very common. Do not be surprised if that happens. Most jury trials take under a week. They may be a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Every once in a long while, you may have a trial that goes on for weeks. My most recent trial that I completed did go on for some time and was separated, and we had to plan around the jurors' schedules and vacations and graduations and all different kind of situations, and we had to do that. We accommodated our jury because their attendance was required and critical. Now, let's just say that you do not get excused from jury duty and the trial is going forward. So you're there on that typically a Monday morning, and you are there in the courtroom with about 100 people, and then the prosecutor or the plaintiff and the defense attorney, they're all there in the courtroom, and we're going to go through something called the jury selection process. And what that looks like is you will now be asked questions orally. So they already have your printed questionnaire that you filled out that has basic information. Now they're going to be asking you more information that is more going to potentially the facts of the case to see if you would have any sort of bias or reason that you may not be a suitable juror, or maybe they just they have a certain number of passes that they would rather that you not serve on this jury. And so we go through that process, 12 people at a time typically in the jury box being asked questions. The attorneys are striking the jurors that are not going to work, and then they're being excused. And so that is sort of the process of jury selection. Then once the jury is selected, we will have the trial, and then there will be a verdict rendered. After the trial, the jury members, if they would like, get to stick around and ask any questions they want of the court, of the lawyers, and that's a very interesting part of the process. I think it's for everyone involved. The lawyers like to find out what they did right or what they did wrong and what they can do better the next time, and the jurors oftentimes want to know information maybe they weren't allowed to hear during the trial because they're not allowed to hear everything about a case because of evidentiary rules. I have about 5 minutes. I don't know if anyone has asked any questions so far. I'm hearing no. But one thing I did want to talk about, this is a common question, is typically during the jury trial you will not be sequestered until you get to deliberations. And what that is so during the trial from pretty much 9 to 4 or 5 p.m. every day you're going to be in trial. And then you're going to go home to your family. You're not allowed to consult with anybody, talk to your friends about the case, look on the internet. You have to have kind of an information blackout, but you are allowed to go home. Then, once the case is closed, the lawyers have presented all of their evidence, and the jurors have been given all of the instructions of the law. Then you become sequestered, and so you stay together, the jurors, with the bailiff and with the court officer until there is a decision, however long that may be. Now, most cases, that's not overnight. Generally speaking, it's a few hours, maybe all day, but it could be overnight, in which case we have to. The county provides for hotel rooms for everyone. We have security. You go, you spend the night at the hotel, you work on the case until bedtime, then you come back, start up in the morning. And those are rare occasions, but it does happen. We've had a very short time to cover this topic that I'm sure may have created a lot of questions. I want to tell everyone you're always welcome to stop by the court. We do have open courts. You can stop by if you have any questions. I'm happy to see anyone. Call us at any time if you get summoned, or before that if you have any questions. Wish you all the best of luck if you do get summoned, and hope you enjoy that process. Oh, and maybe ask your government teacher